It started like any ordinary morning, except it wasn't supposed to be ordinary at all. My girlfriend had spent 4 months planning a trip back to California to see her dying grandmother. It might have been her last chance to spend time with her. She was the type who planned everything down to the smallest detail. 5 bags packed a week in advance, color-coded folders for her flight information, backup plans for her backup plans. "You can never be too careful," she used to tell me. And I believed it. I'd never once known her to leave anything to chance. So when I woke up the morning of her flight and found her still lying next to me in bed, long after she should have already been at the airport, something in my gut told me this wasn't right. Not just late, wrong. I shook her awake. She blinked up at me, groggy, and when I told her the time, she didn't panic. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't call her mother. She just muttered, "Oh yeah, the flight. Honestly, it should be okay," rolled over, and went back to sleep, like she hadn't spent 4 months building her entire life around that one morning. I sat there for a long moment, just staring at her back, waiting for her to sit up and laugh, to tell me she was joking. She never did. I didn't know what to do with that. I told myself maybe she'd already talked to her family. Maybe something had changed and she just hadn't mentioned it yet. So I got dressed, I made coffee, and I went to work like it was any other day, even though every part of me wanted to stay home. I texted her twice that afternoon. No response either time. Not unusual for her, exactly, but paired with everything else, it sat wrong in my stomach the whole drive home. When I got home, she was on the couch, staring at a television that wasn't even on, not glancing at it, staring, the way you'd stare at something that was actually playing. The second I said her name, she snapped to life, almost too fast, like a switch had been flipped. She wanted to know everything about my day, hanging on every word, leaning in close, except her responses came a beat too slow, like she was translating my sentences from some language she couldn't hear. I asked her carefully if something had happened with her grandmother. Just for a second, less than a second, her smile vanished completely, blank, empty. Her eyes didn't even track me for that moment. They just pointed somewhere past my shoulder. Then it was back, like nothing had happened at all, like I'd imagined the whole thing. "No, not that I know of," she said, smiling wide. "Why do you ask?" "Just wondering," I said, and let it go, because what else could I do? The days that followed only got stranger. She wouldn't leave the house, not even to check the mail. She turned down the park, our favorite Sunday tradition, without so much as an excuse. She barely touched the dinners I cooked, insisting she wasn't hungry, patting her stomach and smiling at me from across the table while her plate went cold. And yet, night after night, I'd wake up somewhere around 3 in the morning to find the kitchen ransacked, cereal boxes torn open and dumped across the floor, granola wrappers shredded into confetti, spilled milk pooling under the fridge, raw rice and dry beans scattered across the tile like something had been pawing through the cabinets in the dark, searching for anything it could get its hands on. Every morning, she'd act like she had no idea what I was talking about. Then one evening, something hit me that I hadn't caught before. A small detail that had been sitting quietly in the back of my mind for days, waiting for me to notice it. I hadn't seen her suitcases since the morning of the flight, not tucked in the closet, not by the door. I checked the bathroom. Her toothbrush was still there. Her shampoo was still in the shower. Nothing had ever actually been packed to leave the house at all. She had never even tried. I asked her about it, standing in the doorway of our bedroom, my heart pounding harder than the question should have warranted. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall like it was playing something only she could see, something slow, something absorbing. When she finally turned to look at me, her eyes were hollow, not tired, not sad, just hollow, like something had scooped out whatever used to live behind them. "Honey," she whispered, almost sweetly, in a voice that didn't quite match her face. "You know that's none of your business." She barely spoke to me for 2 days after that. Wouldn't share the bed. Wouldn't meet my eyes at breakfast. I'd catch her standing in random rooms, just standing, facing the wall, and when I asked if she was okay, she'd answer half a beat too late, like the words had to travel a long way to reach her mouth. It wasn't until the night before she was supposed to return from the trip that she let me sleep with her again, and even then, she slept with her back toward me. That's when the sound woke me up. It was coming from the kitchen. I stepped out of my room and noticed that the kitchen light was on. A wet, tearing sound, growling low and guttural, like something feeding. The kind of sound you'd hear from an animal, not a person. I lay there for a moment, telling myself it was nothing, telling myself to go back to sleep, but it didn't stop, so I got up. The second my foot hit the hallway floor, the sound stopped dead. Total silence. The kind of silence that feels like something is listening back. I stood frozen at the end of the hall, the kitchen light spilling out from under the door in a thin yellow line. Then I heard her voice, but not her voice. Something wearing her voice, sharp, furious. Nothing like the woman I'd spent 3 years falling asleep next to. "Go back to bed," she screamed. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I just turned around and walked straight back to the bedroom, my hands shaking, my heart slamming against my ribs. The moment my back was fully turned, the sounds started right back up behind me, louder this time, like whatever it was no longer cared if I heard. I didn't sleep again that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling until the window turned gray with morning light, and when I finally worked up the nerve to get up, the house was silent, completely, wrongly silent. No footsteps, no shower running, no sound of her moving through the house like she always did. I called out for her. Nothing. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I checked every room down the hall. Empty. My stomach dropped lower with every door I opened, and by the time I reached the kitchen, I already knew something was wrong before I even saw it. There was blood everywhere, not hers, I told myself, over and over, not hers. Raw meat, chicken, steak, pork, all of it, torn apart and scattered across the tile, half eaten. Some of it still fresh enough to be bleeding into the grout lines. It looked less like it had been cut with a knife and more like it had been ripped apart with bare hands, maybe not hands at all. I was still standing there, frozen, trying to make sense of what I was looking at, when the front door swung open behind me. "Honey," she sang out, cheerful as ever, like she hadn't been gone a single day past her scheduled trip. "I'm home. Can you come help me with these bags? I've got so much to tell you." I turned around slowly, and there she stood in the doorway, smiling, radiant, completely unbothered, surrounded by suitcases that only hours before had never once left the house. I helped her carry those bags inside without saying a single word. Some part of me already understood that whatever had just walked through that door wasn't entirely my girlfriend anymore, and that whatever it was better not to ask where the rest of her had gone. I have a Hello Kitty kind of daughter. She's only 9, as cute as a button and as innocent as they come. She likes simple things, stuffed animals, pizza for breakfast if I'd let her get away with it. All it takes is a cheap 50-cent piece of plastic jewelry from a gumball machine to make her whole face light up like it's Christmas morning. She was one of those kids who believed in things a lot longer than her friends did. Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy. She was fully, completely convinced they were all real. Bless her heart, she never doubted it for a second. Sometimes, she'd come home from school, with this glum, tired look on her face. Kids in her class had started teasing her. Still believing in that baby stuff, they'd say. I never told her the truth. I couldn't. She already felt like the world was laughing at her. I wasn't about to be the one who confirmed it. So the lie continued. Santa left the presents. The bunny hid the eggs. And the tooth fairy. She took teeth and left cash. The tooth thing excited her most. Christmas came once a year. Easter too. But a loose tooth? That was random. Unpredictable. Every time one wiggled, she'd come sprinting to show me, grinning that gap-toothed grin like she'd won the lottery. I'd slip a 5 under her pillow after she fell asleep. Quiet as I could manage, easing the door open, holding my breath the whole time like I was the one who'd get in trouble if she woke up. In the morning, she'd come bursting into my room, waving the bill in my face. The tooth fairy came! The tooth fairy came! Sometimes I'd slide her a 20, just to watch her face light up. She wasn't going to be little forever. I wanted to hold on to that as long as I could. I told myself I was buying a few more years of magic. A few more years before the world got its claws into her, the way it gets into everyone eventually. I regret that now. I regret it more than I've regretted almost anything. It started slow. The teeth began coming out faster than they should have, every 3 weeks or so, instead of every few months like the other kids at her school. I figured her baby teeth were just in a hurry to leave. Some kids lose them fast, right? It wasn't costing me much, so I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to ask questions. I wanted to believe everything was fine, but something felt off. Even then, her smile never looked any different. Still that same snaggle-toothed grin, still the same gaps in the same places. Even though I knew for a fact I'd paid out at least 6 times in 2 months. The math didn't add up, but I let it slide. Parents are good at letting things slide when the alternative is scary. Then she stopped showing me her mouth. She used to love showing off the empty socket, tongue poking through the gap, laughing about how weird it felt. Now she'd just hold out her hand, tooth already pulled, sitting in a smear of blood on her palm like she was presenting me with a gift. It kept happening, more and more often. Then she started bragging, to me, to her stuffed animals, to anyone who'd listen, that the tooth fairy would be visiting every single week now, like she'd struck some kind of deal, like she was special. That's when the dread really set in. Then I found a silver tooth under her pillow. Not white, not off-white, like baby teeth get. Silver. A crown. My daughter never had a crown. She'd never even had a cavity. I sat her down and asked her, as calmly as I could, where it came from. She looked me dead in the eye and said it was hers. Just kept insisting, over and over, that it was hers. No hesitation, no fear. Just this flat, practiced certainty that scared me more than a lie would have. So I stopped leaving the money. I told myself it was tough love. I told myself I was protecting her. It didn't stop her. Every single night, a new tooth would appear under her pillow while she slept, even with no reward waiting for her, even with nothing to gain. That's when I understood this had stopped being about money a long time ago. One morning, after dropping her off at school, I made myself a promise. Today, I'd find out the truth, whatever it cost me. It took about 15 minutes, under the bed, inside the closet, through the toy chest, item by item. Nothing. Just stuffed animals and cheap plastic jewelry and the ordinary clutter of a normal 9-year-old's room. Then I looked at her fish tank, that little plastic treasure chest at the bottom. I'd walked past it 100 times without a second glance. This time, I noticed the water, a thin ribbon of red curling up slowly from inside it, dissolving into the current, like ink. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up with why. I rolled up my sleeve and reached in. The chest was heavier than it should have been. Something shifted and rattled inside as I lifted it, clacking together like loose gravel in a jar. I set it on the counter, dripping. My hands were shaking. I opened it anyway. Molars, canines, incisors, a dozen of them easily, all of them bloody, all of them looking like they'd been ripped out, roots and all, jagged at the base, not the smooth, clean fall of a baby tooth that's ready to go. And they weren't baby teeth. Some of them were adult teeth. I stood there in my kitchen, holding a treasure chest full of someone else's mouth, and I didn't know whether to scream or throw up or call the police. My mind was racing through every possibility. A classmate, a stray animal, something I didn't even want to name. And underneath all of that horror, something else was creeping in, something I'm ashamed to admit. Pride. Because whatever my daughter was doing, wherever those teeth were coming from, she'd been pulling it off for 2 months without anyone noticing. Not her teachers, not her friends, not me. My little girl, the one who still believed in Santa, was a natural-born hustler. And some nights, when I can't sleep, I still don't know if I'm more afraid of what she did or of asking her how she did it. This happened about 4 years ago, and for a long time I didn't think much of it. I told myself it was just a weird night at a weird job. But the older I get, the more I think about it, the less sense it makes, and the more it scares me. At the time, I was working at a small electronics store. We sold phone cases, tablet cases, chargers, all that stuff, and we also did repairs. Screen replacements, battery swaps, things like that. It wasn't a big store, just a narrow little shop crammed with accessories, tucked into a part of town that wasn't exactly known for being safe. Things happened around there. Fights, break-ins, the occasional police car parked outside for reasons nobody explained. You just got used to it. It was close to closing time. The lights were already starting to feel too bright, the way they do at the end of a long shift when you just want to go home. It was just me and one coworker left in the store. Everyone else had already clocked out. That's when the door chimed. A man walked in. I remember thinking, of course, right before closing. But that was the job. So I put on the smile and asked if I could help him find anything. He said he needed a case for a tablet. Simple enough. I asked him the model, the brand, you know, the usual questions you need answered before you can even start looking. And he didn't know. Not the brand, not the model, nothing. I told him, as politely as I could, that it might be easier if he came back tomorrow with the tablet itself, or at least a photo of it. That way, I could actually find something that fit. But he didn't want to do that. He insisted he knew the size by eye. He wanted me to just pick a universal case and hand it to him. Something about the way he said it felt off, but I brushed it aside. People are impatient. People are weird. I've dealt with worse. So I walked him over to the display and started pulling a few options. That's when I noticed I could barely understand what he was saying. His words were coming out slurred, mumbled, like his mouth was full of something. I figured maybe he had an accent. Maybe he'd been drinking. Maybe he just talked like that. You make excuses. You don't want to be rude. And then I smelled it. Iron. That unmistakable metallic smell. My first thought, and I still don't know why this was my first thought, was that it was the display hooks. The metal pegs we hung the cases on. I told myself that's all it was. Then I looked down. There were drops on the floor. Small, dark red drops, spaced out like a trail, leading right up to where he was standing. I froze for a second. My brain was doing that thing where it tries to come up with any explanation that isn't the obvious one. Maybe he cut his hand. Maybe he stepped in something. Maybe. The man was still looking at the cases, running his fingers along them like he was actually deciding, like this was a completely normal transaction. And then he opened his mouth to speak to me again. His mouth was full of blood, not a little, full, dark, thick, pooling behind his lips, and I could see, I swear to you, I could see, teeth floating in it, not in his gums, floating, loose, like his mouth was a container and they were just debris inside it. I have never in my life felt my body go that still. It was like my eyes zoomed in, like I was taking a photograph I never asked to take, and that photograph has never left my head since. 4 years later, I can still see it, exactly the way I saw it then. I couldn't process it. I couldn't even fully register what I was looking at, because my brain didn't want to accept it. And underneath all of that, underneath the fear, was this overwhelming smell of blood that made my stomach turn. He kept talking, kept trying to ask me questions, and every single time he opened his mouth, blood would splash, just slightly, onto his lips, onto the floor, onto the case in his hand. And then, he asked me where I lived. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I have sat with it for 4 years. A man, standing in front of me, mouth full of blood and loose teeth, no explanation for any of it, asking a total stranger, asking me where I lived. I don't know what came over me in that moment, but every instinct I had told me to get away from him without making it obvious. So I did the only thing I could think of. I pretended I couldn't understand him. I acted confused, like I didn't know what product he wanted, like the language barrier was the problem, instead of the very obvious river of blood coming out of his mouth. I told him to hold on, and I walked to the back of the store where my coworker was, and I told him what was happening. I don't even remember exactly what I said. I just remember my voice not sounding like my own. My coworker went up front to deal with him. I don't know exactly what was said between them. I stayed back, out of sight, trying to catch my breath, trying to make sense of something that made no sense. Eventually, the man said he'd come back tomorrow, with money, like he was going to buy the case after all, like none of it had happened. He never came back, not the next day, not ever, and I was the one who had to clean the floor, on my hands and knees, wiping up drops of someone else's blood off the tile, in a nearly empty store, at the end of a shift that should have been completely unremarkable. For a while, I told myself it was simple. The neighborhood wasn't exactly peaceful. Maybe he'd gotten into a fight. Maybe someone had hit him hard enough to knock teeth loose. People came in banged up before. It wasn't unheard of. But then I think about it again, and it falls apart. Because if you just got beaten badly enough to be spitting out your own teeth, you don't walk into a store and calmly shop for a tablet case. You don't stand there comparing colors. You go to a hospital. You go home. You do anything except stand in front of a stranger, mouth full of blood, asking where they live. I still don't have an answer for what he was, or what happened to him before he walked through that door. I just know that somewhere out there, unless something happened to him, there's a man walking around who once stood in front of me, bleeding from the mouth, smiling with a mouthful of red, wanting to know exactly where I slept at night. And I never got an answer. I never will.